Did Stet have a bad game? Absolutely. But physically, you're going to have a bad game. What he really struggled with in this game is like pre-snap adjustments. I don't know if you noticed it, Jake, but
they timed every single snap we had.
Well, there was like 15 times I could count where Stetson, before the play, shifted the offensive line, snapped the ball. Oops, I shifted him the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And he struggled so bad to recognize the blitz.
I agree. No more.
Which I thought was nuts.
No more.
We'll talk.
No more. Because this is good points for to bring up. I'm act so surprised you say that stuff.
Oh my gosh, Kenny, good idea.
Good point. Now we're talking. Now we're playing podcast. Woo, nice. I need to get like live Bravo's feed up somewhere. To be honest with you, I might play it on my phone.
I've got it up right here.
And have no volume on it.
I have no volume, but I have it up.
No, can you entertain our audience while I go grab my phone charger?
All right. Look at Big Mike. Money, Mike.
I made it.
I just talked about how good Michael Harris is at baseball.
You're not wrong.
Actually, I really didn't say that. I pretty much just said, Big Mike, Money Mike, about
Money
3
Mike.
times.
Money
Mike.
Back. Money Mike.
What?
I've been dipping too much recently. Mouth's starting to hurt on both sides.
Your mouth hurts?
Math? Yes.
Oh, big. Michael Harris just about cost that first baseman his ACL.
Thanks, I saw that. Hey, Kenny, I am ready whenever you are, player.
Give me just 1 second.
It's gonna be a beautiful podcast. It's gonna be a beautiful day. Excited. Nice. You have notes. What? Jake and Kenny have notes on podcast? Ooh. I drank a cup of coffee before we got started, too.
Let's go.
Feeling all right. Feeling decent.
Boy, wired.
I found some new like creamer to put in my coffee. It's great. It's like vanilla something. I don't remember. I suck.
I converted to black coffee like 6 months ago.
I can't do it.
I just had to find the right coffee. I like it. It's more potent.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily more potent, but you get more coffee per cup when you don't put cream in it. Does that make sense? And one thing I hate about creamer is I like my coffee like scalding hot.
I don't.
And I feel like the creamer cools it down too much.
Yeah, I'm on the opposite end. I like my coffee warm.
Yeah.
I like any super hot beverages. Let my head breathe this podcast. Why not? I wear hats sometimes when I'm wearing it, and it makes my head hurt. think I got a haircut. I can actually take my hat off and it looks okay. Somewhat.
I'm almost ready.
Anybody's listening on the YouTube thing, we're not doing the podcast just yet. Just let y'all know, this is not how bad our podcast is. We're a little bit better than this. We just talk about stuff until the podcast gets going. We like to get the YouTube going a little early though, so people can check things out. Yeah, I see how it is, Madison. Madison's a fake fan of the podcast. She's not even hopping in this.
She not in there?
No, I'm disappointed.
Where you at, Madison?
Oh yeah, I meant to have some. I actually quit making notes. I will say this: I got through a lot of Georgia and Braves notes, and then I kind of quit because I wanted to go watch the rest of the Braves game.
Yeah.
Let me pull up one thing right quick. I'm going to briefly talk about Hawks, but it's nothing notable. It's just because we have a preseason game this week.
Did you do your Auburn? Did you do your Auburn hate week challenge?
I have not.
Dang it, Jake.
Are we gonna do that today, or are we gonna do that tomorrow?
I guess we'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah, honestly, I'll probably just talk about the Hawks tomorrow because their preseason game's not until a couple days. Like, it's not until October 6th, so it's Thursday. So I can just wait till tomorrow to talk about it. It's more of a look ahead thing, anyways. Today's not a look ahead cast; it's a reflect cast. Reflect on the weekend.
Do you have live Braves feed?
Yeah, I do, my good sir. I do. Too bad my phone won't flip the other direction. This is so stupid. That works. So I just break everything on my damn desktop.
All right, I'm just pulling my notes up in a small tab.
I have my phone sitting on my stream deck, so I'm a little bit nervous, but I think I should be fine. Hopefully it does not press any buttons. If it presses a button on the stream deck, everything might explode.
His computer might blow up.
We might get Boulevard of Broken Dreams by Green Day playing on the podcast. We're gonna get copyright striked. Hopefully it does not happen.
We might get Creed live on the podcast.
Real Ohio.
Well,
I love Creed.
Me too. Okay, let me go grab a bottle of water, and then I'm ready to go, Jake.
Copy. I'll be here waiting.
I'll be right back.
Yes, sir. I'm trying to plug my mouse in. Yeah, it's plugged in. Nice.
I'm going to have an aneurysm if we get halfway through the podcast and you say the Braves won the NL East. So I'm pulling up my live feed as well.
I have all my notifications turned off, by the way. I turned them off over the weekend because I knew I was going to be live streaming most of the games, and I did not want to get notifications before the games. So we'll probably win the NL East like 30 seconds before I say anything.
That's very smart of you, sir. Can you take me higher?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Tear it up now, boy.
Okay, be right back.
Copy. Let's see. Is everybody ready for the podcast? It's going to be a great, beautiful day. We're going to be balling out like the usual. Be dope. Got some pros, got some cons, got all types of stuff to talk about. Be a beautiful day in the podcast world. That boy Kenny back in action.
Well, box score. What was the timestamp? We were down 12 with 8 minutes left.
I think that might be it.
Is that right?
I can tell you. Give me 1 sec. All right, Georgia was down 10 points with 14:09 left to play in the fourth quarter. We were down 3 points with 9:39 left to play.
We were down 10 at the start of the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm. I mean, basically. I mean, they kicked a field goal with 14:09 left in the fourth quarter. So,
We were down 10 in the fourth quarter.
yes. Yeah, down 10 to start the fourth.
Down 10 to start the fourth. Did you ever confirm? Is this episode 17?
It is episode 17. Can confirm.
You do look fine with your.
Like it?
Yes.
Thank you.
What sweater are you wearing tonight?
It's just a Nike sweater that says "Just Do It."
Oh.
Hell yeah! Ooh, Peach State. Peach State tailgate.
Jay Minter?
No manner.
Go ahead and hand us the win.
Thanks.
Until they send Kinley out there.
Thanks.
Will Kinley go tonight?
Yes.
Is that 4 consecutive appearances? Well, he didn't go last night.
He didn't go yesterday.
Episode 17.
Mm-hmm.
What's this episode title?
Georgia Sports Suite the Weekend.
Are the dogs dead?
Are the dogs dead? Missouri underreaction.
Missouri. That's how them old people be saying it.
Missouri.
Can you believe Georgia almost lost to University of Missouri?
Missouri?
All right.
Give me the call, Ken. I'll give you a countdown.
Whenever you're ready, Jake.
All right. 3, 2, 1, and we are live.
Welcome in, everyone, to episode 17 of the Peach State Tailgate Sports Podcast. I'm Kenny Cochran, joined by my co-host, Mr. Jake Hill.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy episode for y'all today. Man, Georgia sports fans, it was a very eventful weekend to say the least. If you're a dog fan, boy, it was a nail biter. We're going to dive right into that real quick. But before we get started, I think we need to mention, man, Jake, what a weekend it was to be an Atlanta sports fan, a Georgia sports fan in general. I mean, Falcons win, Braves sweep, NBA preseason basketball is almost here. Dogs are 5-0. Like, what a time to be alive.
Man, it has been a dream come true in Atlanta this weekend, man. I know we're gonna talk about this more as we get into it, but as the title says, in Kenny's introduction just now stated, we were all blessed from what happened this weekend. We have some pros, we have some cons. When I'm saying cons, I ain't talking about the Dirty Birds. Talking about a different football team that we root for. Kenny, I don't know if you have anything else you want to get into the introduction side of things, or if you just want to kick it right off, or how you want to do this.
I was gonna say, man, before we get started, thank y'all so much for listening. Episode 17, we've been doing this thing 17 times, 17 days throughout the past couple months here since Jake and I have started this thing, and we're just super thankful and super blessed to be here and to have any kind of platform that we can get. So, any of y'all that are supporting and listening, it means the world to us. You guys continue to give us your feedback. Obviously, check us out on all our socials. You see us right here, Peach State Pod on Twitter. We're trying to put in some work in there, put some bangers out, man, get some content out for y'all. Check us out anywhere you get your podcast. We're on YouTube as well if you're in the live stream right now, or if you're listening tomorrow, it'll be Wednesday morning when this is uploaded. Be sure to check us out on YouTube. Check out the live feeds. We typically go Tuesday, Wednesdays. You know, sometimes schedule gets thrown off a little bit. We just kind of get it when we can. But yeah, man, it's that's pretty much it for me. Unless you got anything to add.
I don't have anything to add, Kenny, but I know we talked about this beforehand. And I have to start the podcast, you know, every like I do every time. That was a great introduction, great way to bring us into this wonderful episode 17. But we're doing this a little bit different than normal. We always start off with the Braves. But I believe today we are going to start off with the Georgia Bulldogs. So Kenny, I'm going to bring out the good old Uno reverse card and flip this right back over to you. And I'm gonna let you get the podcast started today with a little bit of Bulldogs news and your thoughts on this game we just played against Missouri this past Saturday. And I'll jump in there as you go along with it.
I appreciate you passing me the baton here, Jake. Man, let's go ahead and kick it off. Dog Nation. Boy, it was an ugly one. It was a grind. We've seen a couple things this year from the Kent game, headed into the Missouri game. There's a couple things that you've seen throughout the Dogs this season that you could pinpoint, but for the most part, man, we came out there, we rolled Oregon, we rolled South Carolina, we rolled Samford, we didn't roll Kent State, but we ended up coming out with a 3-possession win. And then you kind of expect to see the same thing going into an unranked SEC matchup. Now it is the SEC. Obviously, you don't ever want to overlook an SEC road game specifically. SEC games in general, man, they're going to be tougher because this is the men's league. This is the men's conference. Ball is different down here. It just is. If you're not an SEC fan, you might not understand, but, you know, Oklahoma and Texas are about to figure it out, so everybody else better hop on the wagon. But it's just the way it is, man, especially when you travel. These fan bases are so toxic, and everybody hates each other. Missouri by no means is a rival to us, but I'll tell you what, Jake, I mean, this game's going to be circled on my calendar next year.
Oh, definitely. And before we get too far into things, I like you said, I want to stress a little bit how big, you know, SEC games are, and, you know, the difference between a Missouri and, you know, a team like an LSU or a team like a Tennessee may not be as big as you'd think, because I look back on things, and I look back on Missouri playing Auburn in a nail biter in a game they should have won, and Auburn this past week playing LSU in a nail biter, a game they arguably should have won. And then you pass the baton. You go, LSU beat the hell out of Mississippi State, who beat the hell out of Texas A&M this past week, who beat Arkansas. So whenever you talk about SEC football, you have the lower end teams, you have the higher end teams, but that skill gap between these teams really is not that big of a difference. So you treat this game against a team like Missouri, who a lot of people think is a team that's closer to the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to SEC football. And really, you know, the way that they play and the way they've played, you know, their opponents so far. I know they got blown out by Kansas State. We're not going to talk about that one. Kansas State's a decent football team, so I'm not going to knock it too much. But like I mentioned, it's a lot closer than what people think whenever you see a Missouri and then you see the higher end teams like an Arkansas and a Texas A&M.
Yeah, and it's just a different feel for the teams, right? The players. And now we're going to get into some Georgia talk here, some negatives and some positives, but I ain't going to lie, this is primarily negative from my point of view, Jake.
Definitely from my point of view too.
But it's just when you line up against another SEC opponent, it's a different level of motivation, I feel like. And I don't mean that to say that we're not motivated every week. We certainly are, and all these teams are motivated because you want to win every single week. That's what gets you a bowl game appearance. That's what gets you a conference championship and ultimately that playoff spot and to have a chance to win a national championship. That's everybody's goal. But teams like Missouri, when you line up against the number one team in the nation in a conference matchup, a division conference matchup, a SEC East matchup, like, you have nothing to lose, man. Nothing to lose. Everyone thinks you're going to lose this game. The spread was 28, I believe, 28 and a half somewhere. Like, you cover 28 and a half, you feel good about it. So you're going out there throwing everything you can at this team, and Georgia went out there and just looked lackluster. Now we're going to dive into it, so we'll start it off with just a little generalization, like Jake just said. But yeah, man, the SEC's wild. Like these teams, it's any given Saturday around here. Obviously, you have the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Tennessees this year, the A&Ms, what we expected, the Arkansas, all those teams that are certainly the higher end. But then you have these teams like Missouri that are going to come out there and give you a dogfight, and you have to be ready for it, or you're going to get what happened Saturday against the Dogs.
That is the truth for sure. I mean, like you mentioned, you play off against a team like a Missouri who, talent wise can come out and compete any given Saturday. I mean, it's an SEC football team. They can play ball, and like you said, I mean, they don't have anything to lose in this game. They can put everything on the line. They can give every bit of game plan they want to Georgia, because this is probably their biggest game they have on the schedule. So I mean, they're going to go out there and give everything they have on the field. And that's exactly what Missouri did. I'm not going to knock what Missouri did, because Missouri came out and played a hell of a football game against the Dogs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you heard Kirby talk about Kent, and I think anybody that watched that game admired the fight that Kent State had. Well, Missouri had that same fight and are a better team.
Yes. Yes.
So, all right, let's get into it, man. The Dogs, we're 5-0, man. 5-0. We go in, we lose the spot. We're number 2 on the top 25 poll. That means absolutely nothing. But we're 5-0. We get the win in an ugly 26-22 victory over Missouri. We're down 10 points in the fourth quarter. Come back and win this thing. It was ugly all the way around, offensively, defensively. The team really didn't get any juice until late in the third quarter when Darnell drop kicked the dude. So it was just it was ugly all around. Now, just to go ahead and get my notes started up, Jake, I want to say I have my notes separated up into sections. So I know you probably don't have the same thing. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but if you want to kind of generally, we can go step by step. I'll just kind of let you know what my sections are, and maybe you can hit on the same stuff as we go along.
Yeah, definitely. I have mine separated in sections, but my sections are only offense and defense, so I can kind of tag along cool. where you need me to.
Well, my first section is just an initial game synopsis. What I saw from the game, from a viewer's perspective, without diving into too much, just things that I noticed from the blind eye at the beginning of the game, and I'll just go through and hit mine, and you can throw in whatever you want. The first thing I want to say on this podcast, Missouri, y'all can go to hell for that dirty play on Jalen Carter.
Yeah, no doubt. Super dirty play that did not get flagged. Now we're down our best defensive player for at least the next 2 weeks. So
that was one of the dirtiest plays I've ever seen, man. For those of you who didn't see it, Jalen Carter got caught in a double team where the tackle did this horrible diving down block into his knee, shoulder into his knee, grabbed his ankle, pulled it, and he's out 1 to 2 weeks. Is pretty much the only update we get. But it was horrible. Came off the field, didn't play the rest of the game. There was a little scuffle before the game, which really just it was so uncharacteristic for this Georgia team. No, it wasn't like we were out there throwing punches or anything, but you saw guys like Jalen Carter and I don't even know who else was out there walking through where Missouri was doing like pregame stretching, and they were like, "What are you doing here?" A lot of pushing and shoving, a lot of talking back and forth. A lot of people think that gave Missouri some added motivation. I don't know what it did, but for it to result in that horrible, dirty play, I mean, that tackle should have been ejected from the football game. That was absolutely, absolutely dirty.
Yeah, it was a terrible play, and it was definitely not something you want to see. It adds on to the negativity that this whole game had around it. It's kind of one of those, like, not cherry on top, because we're not talking about a good thing right here, but it's kind of like one of those things, just plummets on an already bad day that we're kind of having in that aspect of things.
Right. All right, let's dive into it a little bit more. One thing I want to say, and we just mentioned about how they played a heck of a game, man. This Mizzou team showed up and just played significantly harder than Georgia did in all aspects. They were buzzing. We looked like a dead team. We looked completely disinterested to me. It looked like it honestly, what it felt like to me is that we worked all week and game planned against the team, and then we showed up on Saturday and didn't realize we were playing Missouri until the opening kickoff.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I feel like this is back-to-back weeks where we kind of got out schemed, and it kind of bit us in the tail early on in the game until we could figure something out.
No, absolutely. The next thing I had on here, just from my initial synopsis, the offensive line struggled all game. Play calling wise, like from the coaches, The blocking schemes were correct, but fundamentally we were all over the place. And I've got a little film dive-in review. We're going to do a little film talk session at the end of this thing where I'll dive into that a little bit more from a in-game football perspective of what you want to see scheme-wise and what we just could not do fundamentally. But to round it all out, yeah, the offensive line struggled from head to toe. Next thing for me, Stetson was off the entire game. Fumbles, miscues, dropped balls. When he went back to throw, ball slipping out of his hands. He was missing throws. It was just super uncharacteristic for him. And Stetson, relatively, he's been kind of a streaky player. He's a guy that's he'll give you a bad 8 minutes of football every once in a while, but for the most part, he's a pretty consistent player, and he gets through it. And he fought through some adversity and came through at the end and came through for us, obviously. We came away with the win. But my biggest critique of him was on the mental side of things. The pre-snap adjustments were off. Things were weird. It seemed like there were probably 13, 14, 15 different times when I went back and watched the film that he went up to the line of scrimmage and shifted the offensive line pre-snap. And after the ball was snapped, he shifted them the completely wrong direction, put them in a horrible position to where they couldn't recover, resulting in a sack or a pressure or a busted play. He really, really struggled in this game recognizing the blitz. Which I thought was kind of ironic because Missouri brought the house every single play, it seemed like. So eventually you just kind of have to assume that they're going to do that. And credit this Missouri defense, man. They did two things really, really well. I'll say three things, one from a personal perspective. These are some good players on this Missouri team. They don't get talked about a lot. Some really, really good players. They played good. They played tight coverage. They played tight coverage against Brock, man. Like there were some contested catches that Brock had where the only reason he made the catch is because 19's better than you are. But they played great, man. And fundamentally, the two things I wanted to hit on, number one, they had a ton of hidden pressures in this game. They disguised the blitz so well, and obviously Stetson couldn't pick it up, but we were having a hard time picking it up all around the place. Like they did a really, really good job of that. And then one thing, this Missouri game plan was very, very obvious. They were going to load the box and force 13 to beat them, and it took us about 2.5 quarters to figure that out before we could come away with some offensive production. Another thing I want to talk about, Ladd McConkey, man. I don't know if your girlfriend broke up with you before the game last week or what's going on, but he confuses me so much. Dude will run an NFL-type route, look like Hunter Renfrow out there, running a beautiful route, and then the next play he'll run a peewee football route and drop the ball.
Yeah, it's been a really bad 2 weeks for our friend Ladd.
And for somebody that's just so daggum consistent, that's so disheartening to see. And he'll figure it out. I'm not off the Ladd train at all. Like, the dude's he's an absolute stud. He's a great player. He's the top receiving target for us, so he'll figure it out. But yeah, we've got to work on that. Turnovers, that's what's killing us, man. 5 turnovers in 2 weeks, Jake. Kent State to Missouri, 5 turnovers. We are down the turnover margin in both games. That's a good sign. It's not a good sign when you're losing the turnover margin, but it's a good sign for a good team. Because a good team, you ask any coach in the nation, a good team wins games when they're losing the turnover margin, and that's what we're doing. So don't get me wrong, this is a great team. We're still struggling in the red zone, man. This has been our Achilles heel all year, aside from the Oregon game. It's like when we get down inside the 20, maybe the 15 specifically, the execution's off. The play calling's good for the most part. Like you could be critical of Monken on a couple aspects, but for the most part, it seems like the plays are there. We're running the right thing. We're just not executing. It's like the whole offense seems to break down when they get down there, which is just weird. The defense. My biggest takeaway from the defense in this game. This defense is very young. They're fired up, but these are guys that don't have a lot of experience for the most part. We're starting to see that losing all these guys to the NFL draft, we're seeing that come into play. This defense struggles immensely in high-tempo situations.
Yes.
So we struggle so bad in high tempo. When we're not subbing guys out, and if you're a football fan, you probably noticed this. The way it works is when the offense subs players in, they have to give time for the defense to sub players in. The rest will actually walk up to the line of scrimmage and keep the center from snapping the ball. But if the offense doesn't sub players, the defense has no right to sub players. They can try, but that's when you get caught with 13 on the field or in a bad spot. And this offense came out there and didn't sub players and stayed fresh, and we weren't able to rotate, and the players just weren't ready for it. And to round out my initial game synopsis, I want to round it out with a quote from yours truly that I told a couple of my buddies, including Jake, in game time. This is a direct quote. I was really hoping to coast to 35-0 in this game and watch the Pat McAfee broadcast on ESPN2. But instead, I'm 5 beers deep, and I didn't even start drinking until after the Kendall Milton fumble in the first quarter.
I wonder who quoted that. Who said those famous words?
That's your boy.
That's you. Facts.
That's your boy.
I did get that text message. I will say that I did get that text message on Saturday night. Can confirm.
So that's the kind of game this was, man. So we'll dive into it a little bit more from an actual game plan perspective. But Jake, you have anything you want to hit on? Is just your initial thoughts?
I think you covered everything pretty well. I do want to say that I have a couple things that you spoke on that I would like to hop into a little bit. We talk about the Kent State game and now going into this game against Missouri. It's been slow starts in both games, which is kind of scary. In this game right here, five of our first 7 offensive drives ended in punts or turnovers. The other 2 ended in field goals. This is also the second straight game where an early fumble led to opponent's first score, because that also happened against Kent State. We had an early on fumbled in our own red zone or in our own territory, and Kent State was able to get the ball back and kick a field goal. Same thing kind of happened here. We look back on it. Kendall Milton had a great carry up the middle, got about 20 some odd yards, and then somebody came up and peanut Tillman the ball right out of his hands. I'm not going to put too much on him because that was a great play by the defender, but it led to the same situation. And, it led to Georgia being down for the first time all season. And, that was a pretty common occurrence all throughout this game to the very end. We talk about the red zone struggles. I do want to mention with the red zone struggles, A.D. Mitchell is a huge part in that. Getting A.D. Mitchell back on the field is going to help immensely in that category, because when you get to the red zone, AD's your guy. You line up on the left side of the field and you tell him to run a fade route and go up and get the ball over somebody. That's what AD Mitchell's job is. That's what he's best at, and that's what you like to do. We have other guys that can do it, but we don't really never see that type of play happen between like Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington. I don't think Ladd's too much of that type of guy. And then you talk about Ladd McConkey. I love Ladd. Me and you both love Ladd. I feel like he's getting a little bit exposed being in that wide receiver 1 spot. I don't know if that's really his best spot, and I don't know if him and Stetson have the connection for him to be that spot. I think when you have AD on the other side of the ball, putting in work against a DB, he's going to draw more attention than Ladd will from safeties and wherever he's running on the field. And it kind of leaves Ladd open somewhere on the field. And that gives Ladd all his, crazy stuff. Because you look at Ladd McConkey's numbers when AD Mitchell's on the field, box score numbers, he's going to outplay AD. He's going to put up 87, 90 yards. He's going to have a crazy 90-yard, 1-tud game, and AD is going to be on the other side of the field with a 50-yard, 1-tud game. And that's just how it works. But it works so well in that aspect because it kind of seems like Ladd can come alive in that situation. But with him being, wide receiver 1, having the other team's top corner on him, I don't really feel like he can capitalize in that situation. I'll let you go to the next one because I don't really want to dig too far into it and start reaching into your other category. So I'll let you get into your next category you have, and then I'll keep on talking as you go.
Okay, so my next category is individual player notes.
Okay.
So this is just notes that I took from individual players in the game, not necessarily looking at the team from a whole. So I'll go ahead and kick it off. First thing I noticed, Dom Blaylock.
Oh, Dom.
Boy, we are so glad to have him back.
Yes. It's always good to have Dom on the field. He's a very talented kid, and he's a guy that struggled with injuries throughout his career. We can hope that we can have a healthy Dom Blaylock, and he can see the field plenty this year.
You remember back to like 2019, that Georgia team in 2019, when we needed a big play on third down, Dom Blaylock was the guy.
Yes. And I feel like we have not seen him healthy since until now.
Exactly. We haven't. And that's exactly what he did for us, man. We needed big plays from Saturday, and he came through. Big 3rd and 12 conversion catch from him, laser thrown by Stetson. There's a couple plays from him that were just huge. Dom's not necessarily a guy that's going to tear it up on the box score either, but just as far as game impact goes, it's hard to find a player like Dom Blaylock. Dude's got hands of steel. He can catch anything. So we're very, very fortunate to have him back. Another thing I want to say is Arian Smith, man. Aaron Smith, I thought it was very interesting. He has not played all year. He's another guy that's been battling injuries, but he is such an immense talent. As soon as he stepped foot on the field, that defense recognized him. The safety started favoring him. He caught the attention of every defensive back on the field. You can see that defense key in on Aaron Smith. And when you have a dynamic player like that in the game, regardless of if he's getting the ball that frequently or not, that's a big advantage to your team. You're drawing attention from anybody.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to jump your gun too much here, but I am going to go ahead and say, as we're on this kind of wide receiver topic, getting these guys back is such a big deal. And I talked about AD earlier. Getting him back is going to be huge because I don't know your opinions on the guy I'm about to talk about, but I know my opinions. I don't love seeing Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint on the field so much. And getting these guys back should limit how much we see him play football for Georgia. I enjoyed Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint last year in the role he played, coming on the field every once in a while, maybe getting one grab for 15 yards for the whole game. But seeing him on the field almost every down, he doesn't produce nearly enough. And, seeing his route, seeing all what he does, he's a guy that if he's open, you throw him a good ball, he's going to come down with it. Don't get me wrong, but he does not have the explosiveness that this Georgia offense needs from that other wide receiver spot. So seeing guys like Arian Smith and Don Blaylock who do have that type of explosiveness, get healthy and be able to get on the field, it's such a big deal for this Georgia team. And I think that, like when we get AD back, having so much depth at the wide receiver position, you have 5 or 6 guys you can go to and confidently, know that they can go on the field and make a play. So it's so huge to have these kids back right now.
Oh, yeah. Very well said there. Next guy for me, I put a couple stars next to this one because he's undoubtedly the MVP of the game. The only player on the UGA roster that showed up for all 4 quarters is Jamon Dumas-Johnson.
I have a note on him as well. So
JDJ, man, continues to be elite. This is we mentioned it a little bit last week. We got to see him a little bit more in the downhill run game. Amazing downhill run defender. This dude fills gaps. Now, he'll miss the occasional tackle, but you can't ask a guy to go 100%. But in a game where JDJ is missing a couple tackles, you have some defensive miscues. So, throw that out the window a little bit here. I'm going to say amazing downhill run defender, really, really good in pass defense. Broke up a couple passes, made a really, really big impact plays on 3rd down. But the one thing about him I want to say is he's a great leader. This guy is a sophomore. He's a very young player. When you're a sophomore in college, you're obviously on the younger side of things, and it almost seems from a pride standpoint, when you're a young adult college kid, you come out here and you're playing with some grown men and some younger kids, you almost don't want to, your pride will kind of get in the way a little bit when you're talking and looking at guys from a leadership perspective. But, don't get me wrong, this guy's the leader on the team. But sometimes it's a little bit uncommon to see players have such high respect for an underclassman. And JDJ jumped all over Kamari Laster on the sideline. All over him. Got in his face, was telling him, you were doing this wrong, you got to be better, you got to do this. What I noticed from that conversation is Kamari Laster pulled his helmet off, turned, looked JDJ right in the eyes, listened to every single word, did not crack an attitude, did not argue back, said, yep, you're right, I'll do better, walked off, came out there and fought through some adversity. So JDJ, all the props in the world to you, man. This team is lucky to have you.
Yeah, I have notes on JDJ too. This is the most pure talent we have seen from the linebacker position since Roquan Smith.
Agreed.
If you gave this guy the game experience that Nakobe Dean had, he would be a better football player than Nakobe Dean. I am 100% sure on that. The way that this guy can get sideline to sideline, make every play on the field is incredible. To me, I have a note right here that says he might be the best player on this Georgia defense. He has impressed me so much. And you're right. Sometimes you might see him miss a tackle. Sometimes I've noticed in the run game, he might pursue the wrong gap and completely leave it wide open, but he cleans some of that stuff up. This dude is going to be a killer. Watch out for this guy to be a 1st-round pick in the draft, in the future, if he can keep this up at the college level. Because he is a freak. You talked about the Kamari Laster thing really well. There was a play that Brady Cook, I think is that Missouri's quarterback name? Yep, Brady Cook strolled out to the right side of the field. Kamari Laster had the wide receiver, and he let the wide receiver sneak behind him, and Brady Cook threw about a 30-yard ball to a wide open wide receiver on the sideline. Very next play, Kamari Laster gets flagged for pass interference. Same receiver. And after that drive was over, JDJ was in his face. It reminded me like N'Kobe Dean last year in the national championship game, getting all up in Channing Tindall's face whenever he about allowed the touchdown catch. That type of leadership you can see, especially from a guy that's a sophomore, it is insane. And Georgia fans, we love our middle linebackers. Middle linebackers are kind of what makes this defense go. And just to see another guy hop in and start to fill that role so well, it is amazing to see, man. He has been awesome at the University of Georgia. Smell Munden's been playing good ball too. So those two guys have been playing very, very good ball at the middle linebacker spot. And I know this is something that me and Kenny have talked about. And we stressed that it's going to be a huge season for them getting everything together. And, so far through 5 games, I have been very impressed with what we've seen from them. They have some stuff they can clean up because they're both pretty inexperienced players playing every down, but they are impressing me a ton.
I want to mention, too, on that play you talked about, Kamari Lassiter getting beat. We've sung his praises all year long, man, but Malachi Starks also completely misread that. He's got to be there for the back support, and he just wasn't. He didn't recognize that play, and you're right, wide open receiver. So a couple miscues there. The next guy on my list, Keely Ringo. Keely Ringo might have committed pass interference on every play in this game. He only got flagged for it once. He got busted on that big 3rd down play, which it was a little bit. Was it PI? 100%. That ball was also 5 yards out of bounds.
Yes.
So, whatever. Keely Ringo obviously is an amazing talent, one of the best corners in college football, if not the best. So I'm going to kind of throw that out the window a little bit and say he had a bad game. But I thought that might have been worth mentioning. Next thing on my list, Kenny McIntosh. Kenny Mack is the guy, man. We didn't expect to see too much out of him in this game. Didn't know if we were going to see him at all, to be honest with you, because he's battling that ankle injury. Came out there and did everything you could have asked from this guy. And that brings me into my next point that kind of compounds with Kenny Mack. Kendall Milton. Contrary to popular belief, Kendall Milton is not an incredible downhill runner.
No, I have to agree with you on that.
And it's crazy to say because you think of Kenny Mack and what he brings to you in the pass game, catching swing routes out the backfield. Kendall Milton was the best between the tackle runner we had in this entire game. He might be the best between the tackle runner we have on the team. And we haven't seen too much out of him. We've seen him get 5 carries, 6 carries, 15 yards, 20 yards, and then do a lot in the passing game. But in this game, he had to step up and play a big role. Obviously, Kendall Milton had that fumble early on. But one thing about Kendall Milton I'll notice, man, you see a lot of times running backs will take the ball, follow their blocks a little bit. He doesn't really do that. Instead, he just kind of stutter steps at the line of scrimmage. You don't see too much, putting his head down and busting through a hole.
Yeah. And, talk about the running backs. One thing, oh my Lord, I am so sorry. I keep on having this damn audio play and it will not stop. I keep on pausing and it will not stop. I do want to mention that in the 4th quarter, last drive of the game, Kirby Death March style, run the ball down the throat, run the clock out. Dejon Edwards had 7 carries in 8 plays. So it kind of shows, how well-versed this running back room is whenever you have a guy like Dejon kind of taking over that lead back role on such a pivotal drive, at the end of the game. Whenever, I think most Georgia fans would expect to see a guy like Kendall Milton getting those carries, but it was Dejon. And, this is a guy that we've talked really highly on. And to see him, get a big role, especially over the past couple weeks, has been huge for this Georgia team because you kind of have that ability to have a couple different guys that can completely just tote the ball downhill, which is nice.
Oh, absolutely. Dejon, dude, he's an absolute stud. I've been very impressed with him. He's a guy I wasn't as high on as some people were, and he's completely won me over. Next guy on my list, Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is him. He is 100% him. He is everything you could expect. He is the best player on the field at any given point in time.
He is the best player on the field at any given point in time. And I do want to mention this, and this is going to be me kind of taking a shot at Todd Monken a little bit. Brock Bowers ran the ball all over everybody every time he gets a chance to run. Why do you go into this game and not give Brock Bowers the ball one time? Whenever this Georgia offense is struggling, you find a way to get the ball in that guy's hands. And the easiest way to get the ball to that guy in that guy's hands is hand the ball off to him. You ain't got to worry about coverage. You don't have to worry about anything. And Georgia did not do that one time. Not a single time. Georgia, we look at Kenny McIntosh. I know he's dealing with a little bit of an injury bug. This Georgia offense rolled so well through the first couple weeks of the season because he was such a pivotal part in the passing game. He had 1 reception for 10 yards. This is not what we can be doing, guys. And I know Stetson had a couple missed throws going to the sideline and stuff. There's a couple things that we could clean up, but there was not very many design plays to get Kitty McIntosh and Brock Bowers the ball and, with space to play. Like, we were trying to do too much stuff downfield, and it kind of came back to bite us. And, we're going to have to figure that out. I love Monken. Monken is the best offensive coordinator that Georgia football has ever had. I will say that 1,000% confidently. But we can't just go away from the game plan that has worked so well so far this year. And that is exactly what happened in this game. The game plan was awful on the offensive side of the football. I don't know if it was because we thought we would come in and be able to blow Missouri out the water and just outplay them, but it was very, very disappointing to see. Let's save it.
Braves.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Okay. Compose.
All right. Next on my list. Next on my list, Darnell Washington. Big O. We have got to find ways to get Darnell Washington the ball more.
1,000%.
He is a guy that will go up and get it. He is 6'7", 270 pounds. It doesn't matter who you put on this man. You can't stop him. Stetson Bennett. Do not overthrow Darnell Washington, please.
We saw it in the game. We saw it in the game. Darnell was on the sideline, and you somehow overthrow a guy at 6'8". It was a rough game for old Stet.
It was. Last guy on my individual list here, Tyke Smith. Tyke Smith had a huge game for us, man. He looked great in coverage. He played physical football. He was flying around the field. We are very, very happy to see Tyke Smith getting some more PT.
Yes, Tyke Smith has seen more playing time as the weeks have gone on, which is very nice to see. I do want to mention that the first touchdown that Missouri scored was that little play where the tight end kind of ran like a little drag route, and there was a running back. I want to say there was a running back. I don't have the film in front of me, so I'm trying to go up memory. And then he kind of ran the tight end kind of ran like a wheel route, and both Tyke and Chris Smith. It looked like Tyke was supposed to have the running back, and Chris was supposed to wait up and wait for the tight end. Tyke played position. Chris came up with him and tried to get the running back. Tight end runs wide open to the end zone. So I don't know if that's just a miscommunication. Obviously, Tyke's a guy that has not, been on the field every down and, seen every play. But to me, Chris Smith, that's a play you can't be so aggressive on. You seem like you were the deep safety. You have to cover that deep, that spot on the field, and it was wide open. So I'm really excited to see Tyke back. He was a guy that a lot of people ranked in their top 10 safeties in college football going into the season. So seeing him get healthy and get more playing time is huge. And if that was your last players, no, I have a couple players I do want to mention. I think it's just one or two. Bobby Beal. Through 5 games, our sack leader last year has been very, very quiet, which is very concerning for me. This Georgia defense has not been able to get very many sacks. And I know sacks are kind of a weird stat because if you're getting pressures all game long, who cares about the sack, right? Like if you're getting to the quarterback, if you're not getting sacks, nobody cares. It's kind of like the win in baseball. If you have a 2 ERA in baseball and your team sucks, you can get 1 win throughout the season. If you're getting pressures on the quarterback all game long, he's not going to have a good game no matter if you sack him or not. That's just how football works. But I feel like watching Georgia football, I have not even noticed Bobby Beal being a factor at all on this Georgia defense. And he's a guy that we expected to be a pretty significant part of this team, and we just haven't seen it so far this year. Nolan Smith is a great player. Nolan Smith is not a box score player. He's not a guy that's going to rack up a ton of pressures. He's not a guy that's going to rack up a ton of sacks. He is a consistently good player every down. He's on the field every single play, and he's a good run stopper. He has a lot of different aspects to his game, but he's not that number 1 pass rusher. And I think Georgia needs to develop who that guy's going to be, whether it be a Michael Williams or maybe Bobby Beal turns around this year. But so far, we have not really seen that out of Robert Beal. So that is one thing I did want to mention. You already covered the Keely Ringo, Kamari Lassiter thing pretty well. I didn't jump in during Keely Ringo. I did want to say that to me, sometimes it seems like Keely Ringo gets a little bit lazy. Sometimes he plays pretty far off the ball, and they'll throw a shallow route to his side of the field, and his reaction's a little bit slow. He also has a really, really hard time getting his head turned around on balls that are heading his way. And that's something that's kind of going to bite him in the butt, I feel like, a little bit whenever you start playing upper echelon teams. I've had my ups and downs with Kamari Lassiter all year. He still scares the hell out of me. I will say that 1,000%. It seems like if you watch a Georgia game, especially these past 3 or 4 games, you're almost locked in to see a Kamari Lassiter burn play at some point in the game. It's going to happen. So whenever you start playing some of these better teams, it's going to be ugly. And then you talk about how Georgia struggles with high tempo offenses. It just so happens one of the best teams we play on our schedule this year, whether you like them or not. I know some people are not so high on them, and some people are very high on them. Tennessee loves to run the up tempo offense, and if Georgia comes out playing slow like they did today, or not today, but this game against Missouri, against a team like a Tennessee, or hell, even a team like an Auburn or a Florida, you could get, or Mississippi State. We have to go to Mississippi State, play them this year. You can get behind early, and those teams can close the door on you. Missouri played a hell of a football game, but they did not have the ability to close the door. Other teams might have the ability. So Georgia, we have to change some stuff up. We have to get things rolling, and we just haven't seen it yet. So hopefully next week going into Auburn, we'll be able to check that out.
Is that it for you individually?
Yes, that is it for me individually.
All right. My next segment is a new segment to the show. Jake, if you'll allow it, I'll go ahead and dive into this.
Go ahead.
So, something we've never really done on this show before, something that we haven't really been put in a position to dive into it at all. We want to get into the X's and O's a little bit, man. Let's get into some film room talk. I watched a lot of film on this game. I'm a guy that has a tendency to watch a lot of film. This Georgia team really hasn't demanded it too much. Watched a little bit of film, but we haven't talked about it too much on here. I really wanted to take a second and kind of get into the fundamentals of what we do, primarily on the offensive line. And what we need to be doing. That was, kind of the big takeaway from everybody in this game is the offensive line looked bad. So I didn't want to just leave it at that. I wanted to kind of take it another step and find out why did the offensive line look bad. And upon watching the film and diving in a little bit, I think I got some really, really good points here to address. So let's dive into it, man. Film room talk. I'm going to kick it off by saying, obviously, the offensive line struggled in this game. Why did they struggle, you ask? The offensive line could not get vertical. It's not that they couldn't get vertical. It's just that they weren't getting vertical. They were not doing it. The opportunity was there. They should have been doing it. The scheme called for it. The play calling called for it. They just were not doing it. You saw a lot of combination blocks in this game where guys just were getting hung up and they weren't able to get to the second level. And in a zone running scheme like Georgia runs, we run a pro-style offense. This is a prototypical NFL offense. You don't see a lot of RPOs out of Georgia. You see a lot of under center, a lot of zone schemes, a lot of counter schemes. That's kind of our bread and butter, has been for a long time. Even with Monken, we throw the ball a lot more now, but we're still, you rely on that running game a lot, and that's what this offensive line has got to be good at. And in saying all that, I want to address one person individually. I'm not here to attack our offensive linemen because everyone had a bad game. But Warren McClendon stuck out to me, man. He had a really, really rough game Saturday. The blocking schemes were right. He was in the right positions. Stetson, I'll put a little bit on Stetson and say he didn't always put him in the right position in his pre-snap adjustments. But even the plays where he got put in the right spots, he was getting beat, and it was pretty consistent throughout the game. Now let's dive into the X's and O's a little bit, man. Football fans, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, if you love football, if you know ball, you might not know it. From an X's and O's perspective or from a schematic standpoint, so you may learn or you may just be, hearing me do coach talk right now. So let's dive into it a little bit. If you watch a lot of football and you've always wondered why teams run zone running schemes and counter running schemes so much, let me tell you why. Zone running plays, specifically inside zone, where you see Georgia run all day long, is a play where the blocking scheme is designed off of combination blocks. What is a combination block? A combination block is when you have primarily a guard and center attack, usually the nose guard, and you have a chip from a guard. The guard gets up to the second level, picks up usually a Mike linebacker that opens up the hole for the running back to take the ball inside, get up to the second level. You're not trying to blast touchdown after touchdown on an inside zone. You obviously can, and Georgia has done it. You're trying to get to that second level for that 4 or 5 yard gain, and that's what inside zone is, and that's what we run. It's very effective. What's the purpose of a combination block, you might ask? First of all, a combination block is it's where you're giving a player the ability to give a little chip, like I just mentioned, and get up to the second level, and you're essentially blocking two players with one. 1.5, I guess you could call it. And it's very effective because you don't have to rely on individual man-up one-on-one blocking. one thing about combination blocks I'll say is it's so dependent on the ability of that offensive lineman to release and get to the second level. Every single player on this Georgia offensive line has that ability. These are highly touted recruits. These are absolute stud players. These guys are going to be playing on Sundays. So every single player can do that. I'm not here telling you that they can't. They absolutely can. It's just that they didn't or they struggled to in this game. In order for it to work, it's what you call free release. You've got to free release to the Mike linebacker, and we were struggling with that so bad. And when you want to win a game running inside zone schemes and counter schemes, you've got to be able to free release and get up to the second level. One thing about combination blocks, it kind of allows you to make up for a lack in size, talent, or athleticism from an offensive line. You see a lot of high school teams running these combination blocking schemes. It's something to where obviously you think about the first guy you think about interior defensive lineman's Aaron Donald to me. First guy you think about. What's the number one way you're not going to be able to take Aaron Donald out of a game because he's such an absolute stud? But what's one way you can at least try to limit him as much as possible? It's with a double team. It's with a combination block. Give somebody a little bit of help. Give him a chip. Give him a push. Give him a shoulder, and then get up to the second level. And that's something that this Georgia team is just based on so heavily. Obviously, I just mentioned our offensive line is very talented and big and strong and all the things you can say. So I'm not dare saying that we can't, that we're running these schemes because we're lacking in that. It's just an efficient way to play football. It's the same thing with counterplays. Counterplays give you the advantage in the blocking scheme because you're moving offensive linemen. You're pulling guards. You might have a motioning fullback, an H-back, or a tight end come across the middle, open up a hole for your running back to get a little chunk play or a 3 or 4 yard gain. It's something that's so fundamental. This Georgia play, man, this Georgia team, they cut their teeth on counters, and we ran the ball 9 times in the first half of this game. Obviously, we were down very early and frequently until the fourth quarter. I just mentioned earlier in the podcast we were down 10 in the fourth quarter. Excuse me. I think it was 9-26. I think we ran 9 run plays in the first half and 26 pass plays, which is just super weird and uncharacteristic for this Georgia team. 0 counter plays in the entire first half. We started running counters in the second half, and look at what it did, man. It opened up the run game and really helped us move the ball down the field. The first 3 running plays of the game were inside zone. First one got stuffed. Second one, Kendall Milton busted for 35 yards. Got the Peanut Tillman fumble. Third one got stuffed, and then we kind of strayed away from it. So I say all that to say, man, when you talk about fundamental football and you're running these zone blocking schemes, this Georgia offensive line has been doing this for year after year after year. It's what we cut our teeth on. It's our bread and butter. It's how we move the football down the field in the run game. We could not do it against Missouri. And give all the credit in the world to Missouri. They played a hard-fought game. It doesn't matter how hard you play. When this offense is doing what they need to do fundamentally, from a scheme standpoint, they're getting the chip blocks. They're getting up to the second level. They're free releasing to the mic. You can't stop it. I don't care who you are. We're going to gain 3 or 4 yards. We're going to do it play after play. We're going to chop wood. We're going to wear you down, and we're going to score a touchdown. We just couldn't do it.
Yeah, I think that we kind of went away from the run game a little early, which is a little bit disheartening to see. To be fair, early on, outside of the Kendall Milton run, they did have our lunch money. They were taking our lunch money, kicking our puppies, not allowing us to execute how we wanted to execute in the run game. They were blowing up plays before they even had a chance to develop, which was impressive on Missouri's defensive front. Their front 7 played a hell of a game in the first half. It was really, really good to see. You talked about Warren McClendon. That defensive end, I don't know his name. That dude destroyed him the whole first half. I went back and watched some tape too. He worked that man, and he was letting him get straight to Stetson, letting him, get himself involved in the run game. There was one time where Dejan carried it. He bumped into an offensive lineman, had to do a little spin, and he was going to the left side, and McClendon's guy off the right side came all the way around and still made the play, which is not something you want to see on a run that's going to the left side. The defensive end from the opposite side of the field, come over and make a play. That's how you know you got absolutely beat off the ball. And I think that's the biggest issue that Georgia had. We continuously got beat off the football early on in the game. Our offensive linemen were getting blown off the ball fast and early. Like there was no way around that. And it's all about game plan. Whenever we went out after half, we started running the ball more. We started getting a little bit more feel for it. Like you said, you start running a little bit of a counter action, keep that defense on their toes a little bit. They don't know where the play is going to go. That's when things start turning around. And hopefully this Georgia offense takes notes on that. And, we address that going forward in the future.
No, absolutely. It's something that we can't stray away from the run game. We just can't, even when you have an elite passing attack like we do. And I know we've been battling injuries, man. We have. Everybody's going to battle injuries. You can't hang your hat on that because it's going to happen. This is football. It's the most physical game in the world, unless you're talking about rugby or whatever you want to talk about. As far as American sports, man, this is as physical as it gets. And if you want to win, you've got to be able to move the football on the ground. You see it year after year with the top teams in the nation. It doesn't matter who you are. You've got to move the ball on the ground. Um, that brings me to my final segment to close this whole thing out. I wanted to end on a positive note, and this is my positive takeaways from the game. So, Jake, you have anything else you want to add before we get into a little bit of the positives?
No, that's pretty much it. I do have one more little game plan, thing that I noticed on tape a lot. For some reason, and I don't know if it's a game plan thing. I don't want to speak too much because I'm sure that, Monken and the guys, I know they have a lot more football knowledge than I do. That's because they're getting paid the big bucks to do what they do. When we run plays with Stetson Bennett going out of the pocket, why do we run so many plays with him going out of the pocket to the left side and having to make throws across his body? That is something that I noticed we did a lot against Missouri, and it was a very confusing thing. I don't know if it was because that damn and had McClendon's number on the right side, but it is something I did notice, and it was something that Stetson seemed a little bit uncomfortable doing, and I think that might also had an impact in it. So that was one thing I noticed that, I'm going to keep my eye on moving forward to see if that's something we keep on doing, because that's not something I've really, noticed us doing too much in the past, but it's something I definitely saw us do against Missouri.
I think one thing too you can attribute to that is the timing of everything. It seemed like the timing was just off, and when you face a lot of pressure like we did in this game, obviously the timing's going to be thrown off. And it's easy to put things like that on the quarterback. I know we've talked bad about Stetson a lot, but it's not just Stetson's fault, man. Like it's hard to tell from a fan watching the game. It's a lot different than a coach who knows what's happening, or a coordinator, or even the quarterback. But like, let's say a receiver runs a dig route 1 yard too shallow and Stet overthrows him. Like, that's not completely on Stet. This is a play that they've run thousands and thousands of time in camp and in practice. And if that timing's off by 1 yard, that's going to make the difference. And
That's
I
true.
wonder, I wonder if that came into play a few times, predominantly with Ladd, like you said, taking over that number one spot, playing in a little bit different positions than he has in last year and earlier this year. So yeah, I wonder if that had anything to do with it. Maybe we were just trying to extend plays a little bit more than we should have, or yeah, like you said, with McClendon getting beat on that right side pretty consistently, we're trying to move away from it. I don't know, but I did notice that too.
Okay. Yeah, that's my closing thoughts though. You can get to your positive, and we'll roll on with the cast.
All right, let's get out of here, man. Let's talk about a couple positives so we can round this thing out. A lot of negatives, but there were some positives from this game. This team's been extremely banged up. We've been banged up all year, and we're getting healthier by week after week. You see guys come back. We still need to get guys like AD back. Kenny Max getting healthier. Guys like Don Blaylock is huge. Hopefully Jalen Carter, we can get him back soon. They said a week or two is the most recent update I can find. But that's a super positive thing to say, that we're getting healthier. We're getting guys back on the field. We got to get our playmakers back and get the ball in their hands. The defensive line looked really, really good in this game, and you probably wouldn't have thought when you looked at it just from a initial perspective. But only 102 102 rushing yards allowed in this game. 91 of those 102 came in 2 plays, and one of those was the missed tackle by JDJ, which is very uncharacteristic. So write that off as you will. But 102 rushing yards allowed, 91 coming off 2 plays. That's pretty significant. First downs. We had 14 more first downs than Missouri in this game, 28-14. That is huge. And that just goes to show, we mentioned it in the Kent State game, these turnovers are killing us. We're giving them the ball in scoring position, and they're not having to move the ball. You cannot move the ball like that on this Georgia defense. We've proven that between the 20s. When you're driving 20-20 against us, you just cannot do it consistently. But I don't care if you're playing a Pop Warner team. If you give them the ball in plus territory or around midfield, a couple chunk plays and a field goal, that's going to happen time after time. So we've got to limit turnovers. Total yards. We won the total yard margin by a pretty significant amount. 481 total offensive yards to Missouri's 294. So the offense is moving the ball. We've just got to limit turnovers and play more efficiently. One more thing about Darnell Washington. I don't know if you saw the report. Kirby addressed it after the game. At halftime, Darnell Washington walked up to the coaches and said, "Run the ball behind me."
Hell yeah. I love it.
Fired me up, man. One of the best blocking tight ends in the country. Could make the argument that he is the best. This guy could be a first-round talent based off of that alone. Nuts. I'm so happy to have him. He is an absolute dog. And to round it out for me, I want to talk about Kirby and what he said after the game. Now, Kirby said multiple times that this is the most talented coaching staff he has ever been a part of. This coaching staff has been accumulated over years. He's brought guys in. We've seen guys play pivotal roles. Obviously, Dan Lanning on his way out. But you still have really, really, really quality coaches on this coaching staff. And for Kirby, who has been on legendary coaching staff, to say that this is the most talented coaching staff he's ever been a part of is huge. And they were testing this game in every aspect, offensively, defensively, special teams, any way you could think they were. And it makes you feel really, really good that they were able to make the adjustments and come away with a win in a really, really ugly game like this.
Yes. I think you nailed that on the head. Looking in the deep stats in this and success rates and stuff, this Georgia team is nowhere near as far off as what this box score shows. We had less than 70 less yards than Alabama for the complete game, which, that's a significant amount. Don't be wrong. 65 yards might be another scoring drive. They scored 49 points. We talk about like numbers, and we talk about turnovers, and we talk about getting the ball in the end zone. Those are the two key things that this Georgia offense has to address. This is still one of the top offenses in college football. Don't get me wrong. Like, you look at numbers, you look at yards, you look at all the fun stuff. We just have to get the ball in the end zone and quit having stupid turnovers. We had 5 turnovers in the past 2 games, and one of them have been interceptions. That means there has been 4 turnovers that have just been sloppy football. I am a football fan, and if you fumble the ball, I'm sorry, Kendall Milton, this is not towards you, because I do think that was just a good play by the defender. I hate fumbles. Fumbles are the worst thing in football. It's like a pitcher coming in and walking the leadoff guy. It is just something that should be avoidable at this level. So, we have to limit that type of stuff. That's just dumb football. And whenever Georgia straightens that up, which I know they will, there's no question in my mind that they will straighten it up. This team is going to look amazing, and they're going to be right back at that point going in next week. I know last week we said the same thing, said we were about to come out and destroy Missouri because it was a bounce-back game. It didn't happen. So going into next week, at some point, this Georgia offense is going to start getting the ball in the end zone. They're going to stop turning the ball over, and then we're going to start taking off. That's what's going to happen. That Oregon team we played week 1 is a top 20 team in college football. Ever since they played Georgia, they have been a very, very good team. So there's nothing in my head that makes me think they weren't a good team when they played Georgia. So offensively and defensively, and we look at turnovers. We look at this Georgia drives. We had 3 and outs and everything in this drive. I don't want to put it all on the defense, not giving up these long 8-play 70-yard drives. But I mean, there's plenty of times when the Georgia offense only gave the Georgia defense 3 minutes of rest and had them right back on the field or turning the ball over in the red zone. So both of these things are going to kind of cancel out as the season goes on, giving up points and then getting more points. That's what this Georgia team is going to do.
Absolutely. Everything's going to regress to the mean. At the end of the day, this is a very, very good team, a top team in the country, probably the best team in the country, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many others. Obviously, the rankings were number 2. That doesn't matter, guys. Like, this is all about getting to the postseason and making a run. And this is the team that's going to be right in there. We're not downplaying this Georgia team at all. We just got to clean up some mistakes. So, I know we talked a lot about Georgia. We had a lot to talk about this week in an ugly week. We'll talk about in the next episode as we are moving forward, headed into Auburn, a game that everybody's excited for. But, at the end of the day, 5-0, come away with the win. It doesn't matter if it's ugly, if it's pretty, whatever. A win is a win, and we'll move on to the next one.
Yep, that's what we got to do. That rounds it out on Georgia talk for me, Kenny. I don't know about you.
That's it for me.
All right, so is this my time? Is this the time to shine right here? Is this?
Let's go. This it? Let's go. Let's be happy for the rest of the show.
We are out of the negatives, everybody, and we were about to hop in the positives, and things just got a whole lot more positive. Me and Kenny have both had the Braves games on our phones, and let me just go ahead and announce it. Timestamp right here, 10:14. This happened probably about 20 some odd minutes ago, but we wanted to save it for right here. The Atlanta Braves are your NL East Division champions.
No, baby.
Round of applause. Little woo woo. Yeah, everybody that's listening or watching, if you're driving your car, listen to your daily commute, don't clap your hands right now, please, because we don't want that on our souls. But we've said this the whole year. We have said this the whole season, me and Kenny both. Down 10.5 games, we still said this, that we were going to win this division, and it happened. We never fell off, and we were trying to tell y'all, don't fall off this Braves team. This Braves team is going to get rolling, and that is exactly what they did. They rolled. The Mets fell off. I'm not going to say they fell off. The Braves just played incredible ball over the past couple months, and we pulled out the division, which is a beautiful thing. Thank you, Jake Odorizzi, for coming out and pitching a great game. You will go down as a Braves legend from now on. No more Odorizzi hate, even though I do believe this is your last time ever putting on a Braves uniform. Sorry to say it, bud. But he came out and pitched a good game today. Obviously, the bullpen has been absolutely nails over the last, 2 months or so. I think there was a graphic on the game today. Since September, we have best ERA, best everything out of the bullpen, which Braves fans, we come to expect that. Over the past 2 seasons, our bullpen has been amazing. And, when it comes to baseball, it comes to playoff baseball in these big series, I like to say the bullpen and the defense are 2 of the biggest things that you can't replace. And luckily enough, the Braves are very good at both aspects of that. So it's beautiful. My big notes I have, obviously, going to this podcast is the Braves series against the Mets. So we'll go ahead and dive into that a little bit. Going into that series, the Braves were a game out of first place against the NL East, then NL East division leaders, the New York Mets. And I'm not going to lie, I was nervous. Kenny, I'm sure you could say the same. You go into a big series like that whenever the Mets own the tiebreaker, knowing that you have to at least win 2 games. And even if you only win 2 games, it's still a tough climb because that Mets team is going into a series right now against the Nationals, who are the worst team in baseball. Max Fried, Kyle Wright, and Charlie Morton came out and outdueled Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, and Chris Bassett. We could have not asked for a better series out of all of those guys. They did not pitch stellar. Don't get me wrong. They were not out there throwing shutouts. But against a Mets lineup that can add up runs pretty quick on you, they gave us everything that we needed, and it was beautiful. Bax came out, pitched a hell of a game. He only made it through 5. He had a little bit of an illness come up. He was throwing up in the dugout trash can, and Kyle Wright, Charlie Morton just did their thing. It was really nice to see. One note I have is this Braves bullpen allowed 1 run in 12 2/3 innings against the Mets. So the starters got us where we were, and then the bullpen held it, which was beautiful because all these games kind of felt like the Mets got on us early, and then the Braves came storming right back and took the lead, and then it would stay like that all the way to the end. First game got a little bit, out of hand. The Braves were putting up runs, hitting some home runs. Austin Riley, Dansby Swanson, and Matt Olson all homered in that game. And one thing I do want to say about this pitching staff, we kept the Mets' big bats quiet. Pete Alonso, 3 for 10, 0 runs, 0 RBIs, 0 extra base hits. Francisco Lindor, 2 for 13, 0 runs, 0 RBIs, 0 extra base hits, and 5 strikeouts. We limited those 2 guys. And if you look at the Mets statistics, if these 2 guys aren't hitting, this Mets lineup is not putting up too many runs because both these guys are like top 10 in RBIs in the National League. They have all their small little bloop hitters all around their lineup for these 2 guys to drive them in. And the Braves did not let these guys do any damage throughout the series, which was all you could ask for from this pitching staff. It was beautiful. It was such a great series for this Braves pitching staff. I can't even express how great it was.
Dude.
Do you have anything to say about the pitching? I have some hitting notes too.
If Max Fried and Kyle Wright are absolute gangsters.
Yeah.
You line up against 2 of the best pitchers of all time.
Yes.
Not just 2 of the best pitchers in the MLB currently, 2 of the best pitchers to ever be born. And you go 2-0 in those games. And these guys, Max Fried and Kyle Wright, these guys are 20-year-olds. Line it up against MLB veterans, 2 of the greatest pitchers of all time. I mean, what can you ask for, man? Like, you have got to feel so good if you're a Braves fan. If you're a fan of baseball in general, to see something like this go down, like Jake mentioned it, we were nervous. Don't get me wrong. We were always nervous. We're down 10.5 games. We're confident. We're confident in our boys. We're confident in the coaching staff. We're confident everywhere. We know we got the team. These are 2 100-win teams in baseball. And that's nuts to think about in the same division, the NL East, where the Mets have been lackluster. Everyone's been lackluster. The Braves have run this thing for years and years and years. And to keep that thing up, man, like, it's different. It's different now. It's competitive. It hasn't been this competitive in a long, long time. And when you face a dominant pitching staff like the Mets have, and you come out there and you show them up and you dominate on the rubber, dude. I mean, absolute gangsters, ice in their veins. Anything you want to say to them. I mean, we are completely indebted to these guys. Thank you so much. This Braves team is going to go on a run. We've had their back the entire time. If you weren't on the wagon, you need to hop on right now. Hop on the train, and let's ride this thing into the postseason, man, because what a time to be a Braves fan.
Yeah, it was a beautiful series. And we talk about DeGrom and Scherzer, but Bassett has been hot recently. Bassett has been one of the better pitchers in baseball over the past month or so. And we chased him after 2 2/3 innings. He only made it 2 2/3 deep, gave up 4 runs. Like, he walked in a run. This Braves lineup also was doing damage. We look at it. The 2 guys that I want to mention that were easily the 2 best players, the 2 most impactful players were Matt Olson and Dansby Swanson. In the series, Matt Olson was 5 for 9, 4 runs, 5 RBIs, 3 home runs. Dansby Swanson was 4 for 11, 3 runs, 4 RBIs, and 3 home runs. Both of them homered in all 3 games. Like, they were such a big deal. Austin Riley had a hell of a series, and I don't even have him listed on with these guys. Like, these 2 guys showed up for the city. And being Georgia guys, me and Kenny both ourselves, to see these 2 Georgia guys playing for the Braves and just absolutely going crazy in Truist Park, where the stadium was packed out, going wild, and just showing up was beautiful, man. This Braves team has the aggravation with this Braves team is that we will face a guy like Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer and show up and hit. And then all of a sudden we'll face like Jesus Luzardo and strike out 11 times in 5 innings. So this Braves team loves to be the best. They are cocky. They know they're the best. They know what they do. And they show out, man. And that's what helps this Braves team so much come playoff time. They don't care who you put on the mound. This Braves team is confident that they will beat you any given day. And I know football is a little different. Sometimes your players get a little cocky. You kind of like, okay, simmer down a little bit. Baseball is completely opposite. Go out there and show them up all day long. We love to see it. And when you have guys like Michael Harris and Ronald Acuna on the team, you kind of have to be like that. Like, you kind of have to be a fan. Like, okay, yeah, we're going to come out there and show them up. Because I guarantee you, we didn't get to see an Acuna home run like I was wanting to. But if he would have hit a home run, it would have taken him 3 minutes to round the base pass against the Mets in that series.
Oh, you know it.
And Money Mike's the same way. It was actually cool to see because Matt Olson was absolutely pimping his home runs he was hitting, because he was not hitting cheapies. Matt Olson was hitting like 440-foot shots. And he's not really the most showtimey guy. Matt Olson's kind of like down under. And I know Kenny always says this. I'm going to give you this quote, Kenny. Kenny always tells me whenever you see Matt Olson get pumped up, it's a different type of excitement for Braves fans, because that's how you know something big just happened. Whenever you see Matt Olson get pumped, something amazing just happened. I would say Austin Riley, but Austin Riley never gets pumped. Austin Riley could hit a 470-foot walk-off home run in the World Series, and he's just going to trot the bases. But Matt Olson has a little bit of a swagger where he might do it every once in a while. When he does, you know it's a big moment. And he definitely took full advantage of hitting these bombs against the Mets, because he was pimping some shots. It was awesome.
It was awesome, man. I mean, we got the right guys heating up at the right time. We just got to keep this momentum moving forward. It's huge to have home field advantage, and it's huge to have, obviously we don't have to play in the wild card round. We get to sit back, see what happens. As of right now, where it sits, I think we're looking at Cardinals-Phillies.
Yes, Cardinals-Phillies is who we're going to be looking at with home field advantage. Game 1 will be next Tuesday night, I believe.
Let me ask you this, Jake.
Go ahead.
I know the Cardinals are, kind of got a bad reputation with Braves fans in the postseason. What would you like to see in a potential postseason matchup round 1?
So this is a really, really tough question that I've kind of thought about a little bit in the past. I was talking about this a little bit yesterday with some people. The Phillies scare me to an extent because of the Nola Wheeler thing. I'm not a big fan of having to face both those guys. I think that both of them are near the upper echelon of National League pitchers for sure. So having those 2 cogs at the top of your rotation is pretty scary. And, the Phillies have a good lineup, too. You talk about Harper and Hoskins and Real Muto and Segura. Like, they have a lot of players in Philadelphia. Now, we talk about the Cardinals. I don't think the Cardinals pitching is the same caliber as the Phillies, but their lineup is star-studded. I mean, Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt by themselves are a scary, scary duo. We're probably talking about 1 and 2 in the National League MVP race. So it's kind of a hard thing.
Not to mention Albert Pujols.
Not to mention Albert Pujols, who is just after the All-Star break decided to find the fountain of youth and just hit nukes. So
703.
You know how it is with this Braves team. I think the more fun series as a baseball fan would be the Cardinals. I'm going to say I'd rather play the Phillies. There's no doubt in my mind. I think Philadelphia is a worse team than what the Cardinals are. I just already picture in my head right now. And this is not going against the Braves. I don't want to face the Cardinals. I already picture in my head right now Ronald Acuna trying to steal second and Yadi gunning him out and just completely flexing on everybody because that's what Yadi Molina does. So I would rather face the Phillies. I don't want to see Yadi. Yadi is a gangster. Is all I gotta say.
I think I would rather beat the Phillies than the Cardinals.
I would rather beat the Phillies than the Cardinals, and I'd rather play the Phillies than the Cardinals. So it kind
Yeah.
of adds up pretty well. I feel like I talked about how the Braves can kind of hit upper echelon pitchers. They do have Wheeler and Nola, but we also have Fried, Strider, Wright, Morton. Like we have plenty of guys we can throw at them too. And I don't think their lineup is not as good as advertised. I mean, Schwarber, Castellanos, all these guys, but I don't think that lineup's really as good as what, that's a lineup that could be shut out is what I'm saying. They don't have the hitters like the Arenado and Goldschmidt and them guys. I think that's a different tier list of, major league hitters. And our past experience with the Cardinals in the playoffs. I know last year we beat them in the playoffs, but I can never forget about Foltynewic's 10 run first inning. So that will forever live in my mind, especially since we were at the game.
Yeah, in the building.
But yeah, I'm gonna lean towards the Phillies. I would like to play the Phillies, and then I will root for the Mets to beat the Padres, and then I'll root for the Mets to beat the Dodgers, and then we just beat up on the Mets again in the National League Championship Series and make our way to the World Series.
Nothing will make me happier. How about an NL East sweep to the World Series? Phillies, Mets, World Series.
It'd be beautiful. Now, the one downside of that is if we lost to the Mets, which I don't think would happen, but if we lost to the Mets, it would be the worst thing in the world. Like, it would be the worst. I would rather lose to the Dodgers than the Mets. So, now, to be fair, the Mets have to make it out of the Padres series. That Padres team is decent. They're a decent ball club. So, that getting the Braves out of that situation is just enjoyable by itself. Is having these off days all the way till Tuesday. Obviously, you have a game tomorrow, but we all know how that's going to go because it's a meaningless game. We'll probably play Robbie Grossman, and I'm sure this is no offense to Vaughn. We love Vaughn on the podcast. I'm sure Vaughn will probably get some PT. Orlando's been putting in work at second base, so we'll probably see Vaughn out there. We'll see a lot of the reserves out there. Ozuna might play center for all we know.
Dude. I mean, one thing I will say about this postseason, this is no shot at the Braves pitching staff at all because it's top of the league in any way you look at it. But if the Mets thought that it was hell facing Fried, Cal Wright, and Charlie Morton, y'all have fun with Kershaw and Gonsolin.
Yeah, and Tyler Anderson is having a crazy year too. Like the Dodgers have guys, and they always do, which is always super super scary. And one thing about the Dodgers, that lineup is like the Braves lineup. They will put runs up on anybody. They don't care who you have pitching on the mound. They will put runs up on you. So
100%.
This MLB postseason is about to be a lot of fun, especially on the National League side. I don't really worry too much about the American League side. I'm not a fan of America. Like, I know I don't really care about the American League until it gets to the World Series. That kind of sounds like not a baseball fan, but I'm a Braves fan. I like baseball. I keep track of like Aaron Judge and all the stuff he's doing, and I do know I know the American League teams and their players, but I don't really care what they do until the World Series comes around.
You can't worry about it.
So we're going to be seeing now I will say a Braves Yankees World Series would be electric.
Absolutely.
But if you were to make a prediction right now, Kenny, give me your World Series prediction.
Braves Astros.
I'm going the same way. It's going to be a Braves Astros rematch, and we're going to beat them again. No doubt.
Absolutely. No doubt.
I think the Astros are easily the best team out of the American League. I don't want to be a homer and say the Braves are easily the best team in the National League because that's not true. But this Braves team, we mentioned earlier, they have a different grit when it gets to postseason time and when it gets to big time players, like big time series. And especially you add a guy like Michael Harris who wasn't here last year, a guy like Ronald Acuna who wasn't here last year. That's like a different level of like, okay, this is the big moment. We're about to show up. So, and then we talk about Spencer Strider coming back from his oblique. I'm sure, he's supposed to be cleared to be throwing soon. So hopefully we'll have him back for that first NLDS. And hey, Ozzy is not written off yet. So we could be adding a top 5 second baseman to baseball too. So
I'll also mention, I think a Braves Blue Jays World Series would be electric.
That would be a lot of fun. I want to see Braves Cleveland because that was the World Series we won in '95.
Oh, yeah.
And we'd probably sweep them. Like now I'm saying that we're gonna lose Cleveland in the World Series. But yeah, that's it on my Braves notes. There'll probably be a slowdown on the podcast for the Braves tomorrow because what are we really gonna talk about? Like,
yeah,
we won't have too much more Braves stuff going into next week. I'm sure that we might have to readjust a little bit scheduling coming up with the playoffs. I don't want to plan too far ahead because you don't never know how that could go. We could play 1 week of playoff baseball, or we could play 3 weeks of playoff baseball. But I'm sure if the World Series comes around, I don't know if we're going to be doing podcast live during a Game 5 of World Series. So, that'll be something that we'll keep y'all updated on. I'll get Kenny to get on the old Twittergram and put some stuff out, letting y'all know whenever we plan on going live and stuff.
Yeah, we'll be ready.
Yeah, that's it on Brave stuff for me. We're pumped up. We're NL East champions, and everybody buy your gear. I saw that Dick's Sporting Goods was selling Mets National League champion shirts, National League East champion shirts like a week ago. So, thank you, Dick's. Now that's going to be sent to Kenya.
Yeah. Hope you kept your receipts.
Exactly. All right, what'd you say? How about we get them cons?
Let's dive into the Falcons, man.
Let's dive into the Falcons. Kenny, do you want to take the wheel right here? Or do you want me to go ahead and get it kicked off?
Why don't you go ahead? You lead us off, Jake.
All right. So the Falcons had a big game this weekend against the Cleveland Browns and Mercedes-Benz. I think it was a pretty highly anticipated one. This is one that has a lot of featured weapons that I think a lot of people were excited about. I'm sure if it was a common football fan and you were looking at it, I know Pro Football Focus put out a thing that I talked about a little bit last week. And I'm gonna say again now. This is the two best teams with the wide receiver, running back, tight end tandems with Cleveland having Amari Cooper, Nick Chubb, and David Njoku, and then obviously the Falcons. We have Cordero Patterson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts. And I'm sure if you were an outside fan, you'd probably look at the Falcons and be like, "How the hell is that the second best tandem in football?" Because y'all have not watched Falcons football. These guys are real. Falcons pulled away with a 23-20 victory, thanks to a big-time game-clinching interception by our boy, D. Alford, somebody that we talked really, really high on in the preseason. Happy to see D making some plays. I think every Falcons fan, if you're like a hardcore Falcons fan, this guy is like almost Jared Bernhardt caliber. Like, I think he played in the Canadian Football League before he got to the Falcons. So he's a guy you want to root for. You want to see him do good. And this Falcons team is full of those guys. This Falcons run game is insane. The Falcons can run the ball on any defense. I am confident in that. Partially because of the guys we have running the ball, and partially because this offensive line might be good. I didn't think I would say this going into the year, but this offensive line with Drew Dahlman taking over the center spot and Caleb McGarry and Chris Lindstrom holding down that right side is impeccable. We know what we have on the left side with Jake Matthews and Elijah Wilkerson. Wilkerson's a veteran. He holds down that spot pretty well. But I want to circle that right side of the offensive line because Caleb McGarry is a guy that nobody was high on going to this year. I think most Falcons fans are kind of ready to see a replacement at that right tackle spot. We didn't pick up the fifth-year option on him going into next year. Caleb McGarry has been playing some really, really, really good ball so far through 4 games this season. So I hope that maybe he might get an extension if he can keep this up because we don't want to lose that guy. Lindstrom obviously is probably a top 5 guard in football, so Lindstrom's a beast. And this Falcons run game has been amazing. Cordero Patterson, I will be the first to tell you that I did not expect him to do nearly what he did last year, and he is a better football player than he was last year. Right now, the Falcons have the fourth best run offense in the NFL. You would have asked us at the end of last year where the Falcons would rank in run offense through 4 games next season. Nobody would tell you probably top 20, and we are 4th in the NFL right now in run offense. Some negative stuff. I've talked so much positives about Cordero Patterson. Cordero Patterson's going to the IR, so he will be out for at least 4 weeks. He had a knee injury. I think he has to get a little procedure done on it, and I don't think it's going to be something he'll be out for the season with. I think it's just going to be probably about those 4 weeks, and he should be back. And that leads to Caleb Huntley and Tyler Algier being the 2 workhorses in this backfield. One of those names is pretty notable for me and Kenny. It's a guy that we went to high school with, Kenny played football with, and graduated with, so Caleb Huntley from Ball State, Locust Grove High School legend. Really, really good to see him get some significant carries. And
friend of the show.
Yeah, friend of the show, Caleb Huntley. We're gonna have him on here at some point, hopefully so. And it's gonna be really, really fun. I don't want to completely stray away from Tyler Algier. This is a pretty early draft pick we had on a BYU, and he can tote. Tyler Algier can tote a football, and Caleb Huntley the same. I saw a tweet out there on Twitter, and somebody said, You're trying to tell me the Falcons had Nick Chubb on our practice squad the whole year when they were talking about Caleb Huntley. Yeah, this run offense is insane. I do want to mention Damian Williams is a guy that is eligible to come off the IR next week, so he's also a guy that's going to be in that mix. He's a veteran running back that's had good success throughout his NFL career, so I assume that he's going to be a guy that also hops in. But he better hope that he does not lose his spot on this Falcons team, because he very well could hop in and be the third running back with how good that we saw Caleb Huntley and Tyler Algier play. And this Browns, run defense is out. I mean, I haven't looked at the stats, so I'm not going to say it straight up, but I know they have Jadeveon Clowney, who has always been one of the best run stoppers in football. So I'm not going to say that they're one of the best ones. Like I said, I have not looked at the stats, so this is just mindless talking. But I don't think they're a bad run defense. So, props to us for toting the ball all over them. And even if they are a good run or a bad run defense, we've done it 4 games now. So Falcons are rolling. It was a quiet game through the past game. Falcons turned the ball over, and I want to say we ended up running the ball like 17 straight plays or something completely stupid. And it worked for us. Marcus Mariota's that guy. He's not flashy. He's not great, but I understand how come he won so many games with Tennessee, because that is what he does. He's not going to lose you any games. He's probably not going to win you too many games, but he is just consistent. You see consistent play week in, week out from Marcus Mariota. You know what you're going to get from him. So it's actually a pretty beautiful thing. And whenever this offensive line is keeping pressure off of his back, the Falcons seem like they're making pretty good plays. So hopefully we can keep this up going into week 5 next week.
Absolutely. Jake, you did a phenomenal job, I will say, of covering the game. I'm a homer, a complete homer, so I got to give props to my boy Caleb, man. Was so excited to see him get some significant playing time, man. 10 carries, came in the game, scored his first NFL touchdown, hit a mean gritty in the end zone, tore it up. Caleb, obviously, we talked about, friend of the show, a really good friend of mine from high school. Got some really good memories with this guy on and off the field. Super great dude. I couldn't pick a better guy to wish success to, especially for a hometown team. Like, he's living out his dream, man, and your hometown's pulling for you. I was texting back and forth with Caleb yesterday, man, just giving him props, telling him how proud we are. Obviously, on this podcast, we've been singing his praises since day one, so to see him get some burn has just been so exciting for us. And we look to hopefully get him on the podcast soon one day, get him on here, talk a little football, talk a little Falcons, get a little inside source action. But Caleb, we love you, brother. Proud of you, and keep it up, man. We're excited to see you play.
Oh yeah, definitely. I also want to mention another one of you or one of your buddies' friends, somebody that I know Austin knows. Austin's not somebody that's been on the podcast yet, but hopefully we get him at some point. He played against us this week, Isaac Rochelle. He's playing with Cleveland right now. He had 4 tackles against us, so it's also a little bit of a notable thing. Another hometown guy that we can root for. He's from around here, right?
Eagles Landing, man. He was Elka Boy, state champ. Isaac, great dude as well. Another guy you couldn't pick a better guy to wish success to. Great guy, great individual. He was a Walter Payton Man of the Year candidate last year. Does a lot off the field as well. But great guy. Obviously a great player. Notre Dame captain. He's just an absolute stud. So hometown boys showing out in the NFL. That's super exciting.
So is he the one you know Isaac?
Yeah, I know Isaac, man. I went to, for those of you who don't know, I went to Eagles Landing Christian a little bit earlier in high school. He's a little bit older than me. He was a senior when I was in middle school, but got to meet him throughout playing football there, throughout my years there. Just a really good guy, man, on and off the field, obviously, like I just mentioned. Total workhorse. He's a little bit of a unique player, a little bit of a unicorn in the fact that he can play all 3 downs. You don't see a lot of guys like that. He can stop the run. He can get after the passer. Very selfless player and a selfless person as well. So, Isaac, great guy. And, we would love to see hometown boys showing out, especially when you got 2 guys like that are just quality football players, but even better human beings.
And completely hometown too. Like, we don't come from a big city. Like, we don't come from a big place at all. So just seeing people like that anywhere from our area is just completely awesome to see them have success. One last Falcons note I do want to make. Amari Cooper was held to 1 catch for 9 yards. So I like to watch Red Zone on Sundays. I'm not gonna lie to you. I will be honest with everybody. I flip Red Zone, Falcons back and forth. So I don't know how the coverage was working on that. I'm assuming AJT was the guy that was on him. And if that's the truth, then AJT is that dude, because Amari Cooper is a stud. And no matter who was on him, holding Amari Cooper to 1 catch for 9 yards is very significant for this Falcons offense, which was huge. I also did see Troy Anderson. He had some pretty big plays. There was a moment where it was a swing pass to Nick Chubb, and AJ Terrell was like right there, and Troy Anderson was at the linebacker position, and he beat AJ Terrell to Nick Chubb and made the play with AJ Terrell like at the line of scrimmage. It was awesome to see. So I know for a little bit, everybody was kind of saying, why did we draft this kid with the pick we did whenever there were still, guys like Nakobe Dean and stuff on the board? It's for stuff like that. You watch college ball, guys that are great in college does not mean they're going to be great in the NFL. We know Nakobe Dean's a pretty undersized guy for that linebacker position, especially whenever you're trying to tackle a guy like Nick Chubb in open space. Might be a little tough for you, bud. So Troy Anderson out of, I want to say, Montana State has, he's impressed over the weeks. He's obviously getting more play time, which is good to see, because he's a guy that we want to see show out because of where he was drafted and people talking all the trash on it.
Yeah, man, this Falcons team just continues to prove people wrong. They continue to prevail. I mentioned last week, just the ability of this team to fight through adversity is something so unique, because we just haven't seen, this Falcons team got that dog in them, and we haven't seen Falcons teams in recent year, or, since the Super Bowl era, have, that kind of fight in them, that kind of, I'll say, ability to fight through adversity. I guess everybody has the ability to fight through adversity, but this Falcons team is doing it and constantly proving people wrong week after week. It's an exciting team to watch. Obviously, we're hometown fans. We're homers. We love the Falcons. We always do. We pull for them even when we're, top 4 or 5 draft pick in the NFL. But to see this team have some success early on and some people jump on them. Hey, and betting-wise, 4-0 against the spread this year.
Only team in the NFL to do that. Hey, I'm not going to get too far into it because we have an episode tomorrow where we're going to talk about it. It's going to continue next week.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. But that is it on my Falcons note. Like, yeah, I think you said it very good at the end. Just continues to impress. A lot better roster than what I think a lot of people thought. I think this roster kind of reminds me a lot of that 2017 roster on the defensive side of things, where it's gritty. I'm not going to say the talent's all there, but it is gritty. Like, these guys on the defensive side, we have a lot of guys that are young players and a lot of guys that are veterans, like Rashad Evans, who's just out there trying to show that he can still ball, and that's what he's doing this year. Michael Walker at the linebacker position has been great. He's a guy that a lot of people have been excited about. He's our Deion Jones replacement. So, we've a lot of guys. And then Grady Jarrett. Grady Jarrett is having a great year. 3.5 sacks through 4 games at the interior defensive lineman spot. I don't think this guy ages. He consistently, even if this Falcons defense is absolutely terrible, which they're not this year, he's going to put up numbers, and he's continued to do that this year, which is beautiful to see.
Yeah, couldn't ask for anything better, and really, really good showings from the young players early on this year. So, man, we just got to keep it up and keep moving forward offensively, defensively. This coaching staff, this ownership group, managing staff, whatever you want to say about it, has done a really, really good job in recent years drafting. If we can keep that up and build this roster up, dude, like this is an exciting team. This is a team that is proving a lot of people wrong, and we're not going to do anything but get better.
Especially going into an offseason where you're going to have a ton of cap room to just add on with your young pieces, be able to get talent around them with veterans, and it's going to be a fun season. It's going to be, this Falcons team is going to be a fun one to keep up with. We're Atlanta fans, so we know what it's like to go through a rebuild when it comes with the Braves, and then when it comes with the Hawks, and you see that rebuilds get teams in better positions. And I think we have an understanding that that's what you have to do to get there. I think me and Kenny can both say we are all for it. At the professional level, sometimes you get to the point where you can't compete no more. You can't afford to pay all the players on your team, so you kind of have to do it. College level, Georgia can continue to be good for 25 years if we choose to, if we continue to be a dominant program. And in professional level, it's a little bit different. So, I think that we're in a rebuild phase, but it's nowhere near as drastic as a rebuild phase as a lot of people thought, which is nice. Still gives you entertaining football to watch every Sunday. And this Falcons team could play for a wild card spot, which is exciting. We can go into a wild card spot and get absolutely blown out, and I guarantee you, as Falcons fans, are still going to be excited as hell to watch that damn wild card thing. Because my biggest pet peeve in sports is saying, "Oh, why should your team even try? They could just lose and get the draft pick." I don't care about a draft pick right now. It might help you in the future, but I do not care about. Go out there and try to win as many games as you want to. I'm not one for tanking. That is not my fandom. I do understand it helps, but that is not the route I want to see us go. I think that this team should win as many games as they are capable of. And it's like that in every sport.
I mean, that's the name of the game in sports. You want to win. A fan, you want to see your teams win. The team wants to win. Like that's what you play for. So it'd be stupid to pull for anything else.
Exactly. I will say we're pushing an hour 30 right now, Kenny. I don't know if there's any other segments you want to get into. I know we have our bet segment, and I figure that could be one we can end down on. Is there any other thing you want to talk about?
No, I mean, we'll do a little recap of college ball and NFL ball. We can save that for the next episode. We're gonna have a little bit less to talk about after we cover UGA. We'll, get into a little Auburn talk. Obviously, Braves, East champs don't really have much more to add to that. So, no, we can kind of recap everything next week. So yeah, let's end it on how we did betting wise this past week.
Okay, so let's just say let's start off with college. The first bets that we had thrown out there was our favorites for college. Okay, I'll go ahead and let you give your favorite. And
Yeah.
do you want to do our win loss? You want to go like break it down one by one, or break it down one by one, then give our win loss at the end?
Yeah, why don't we do this? Let's go college and just announce who our picks were, and then I'll go college, then you go college, then I'll go NFL, then you go NFL, and then we'll just release the record at the end.
Okay.
So my favorite of the week was Pitt minus 21.5 against Georgia Tech.
Ooh.
Obviously that did not hit, and Georgia Tech won that game in incredible fashion. That was the absolute stinker of the week. My underdog of the week was Kentucky plus 6.5 against Ole Miss. My over of the week was Maryland and Michigan State over 59.5, and my under of the week was Arizona State USC under 60.5.
Okay, so the route I went with college ball, my favorite I picked was Michigan minus 10.5 versus Iowa. My underdog I picked was Kentucky plus 6.5 versus Ole Miss. My over I went with was Louisville, Boston College over 50.5, and my under was Georgia Southern, Coastal Carolina under 64.5.
All right. On the men's league side of things, in pro ball, my favorite of the week was the Giants minus 3.5 against the Bears. My underdog was the Rams plus 1.5 against the Niners. My over of the week was Jacksonville and Philly over 46.5, and my under of the week was Miami Cincy under 46.5.
Okay, so the route I went, this is one I hyped up a lot last week when I was talking, and I even did it through the weekend. My favorite I went with was I'm about to say Oakland. Oh my lord, I'm far off. The Vegas Raiders minus 2.5 versus Denver. I was going to say that was a fat dub. Thank you, Vegas. I was really hoping you'd come through for me because I kept on preaching this Vegas team is way too good to be 0-4, and now they're 1-3. Thank you. I knew you had to win at some point. You did. Arizona plus 1.5 versus Carolina. I don't want to give too much of a breakdown on these, but this is one that I had seen all over social media as being a trap game. All the money was going on Arizona because everybody's kind of going off last year. Thankfully, Arizona pulled it off. It was a tight game. Arizona did not play their best ball. Still, they have not looked good through 4 weeks, and I'm hoping that they'll get up because anybody that watched the podcast or has ever listened to me talk about NFL, Kyler Murray is my boy, so it kind of makes me go for the Cardinals a little bit because I'm such a big Kyler Murray fan. My over was Kansas City, Tampa Bay over 45.5. This is one that I talked about last week, and I was really, really stressed about it. I felt like it was kind of bold because I always was going into that game. I was feeling like it could either be a complete stinker of a game or it could be an awesome game. For me, a complete stinker of a game is like a 13-7 final score, and an awesome game is like a 45-41 final score. And it definitely leaned a little bit more towards the awesome side. I don't think it was particularly as close as I would have liked to see it, but there was a lot of points scored, which is nice. And then my under was the Jets Steelers under 41.5. That one went over. So I was not right on that. Kenny Pickett came in. He scored 2 rushing touchdowns, and that is pretty much all said and done. Zach Wilson came back this week, 2 interceptions. So good to see some things never change.
Well, so pretty good week as a show betting wise. Jake killed it, and he'll get into his record. I went 4 for 4 on the week. Struggled in college ball. NFL came through for me, which is pretty uncharacteristic for me. I'm typically the exact opposite. I do very well in college ball, and then I get crushed on Sundays. So it was kind of a refreshing week to go opposite, but either way you look at it, I broke even 4-4. Win your money back. Let's move on to next week. Pick some winners.
Hey, sometimes a 4-4 day is a good day. Especially it depends on what type of streak you're on. Sometimes it's a bad day. Sometimes it's a good day. So, This is our first time we've ever really done this segment, which is it's kind of a fun segment. It's cool to see like our picks. I went 7-1 the week. Ooh, I was on absolute heater. 4-0 in college ball. To be honest with you, I feel like most of them were pretty easy. Like we talked about Kentucky last week. We knew Kentucky was not going to get blown out in this game. They didn't. Like we know what Kentucky is, and Kentucky does it every week. See Kentucky plus 6.5 against almost anybody in college football is kind of like, okay, this is a little bit weird unless you're talking about like one of those top tier teams like a Michigan or an Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia. Michigan 10.5 felt really, really good going into it. I will say Iowa made that game pretty interesting. Like, I don't think it was a particularly close game. I think the box score kind of like, if you look at the final score, it's closer than what the game actually was because I did watch that game all the way through. But the 10.5 was kind of hanging in there. Louisville Boston College over 50.5 was an absolute lock. I think they scored 60 something total points, so that was an easy one. And Georgia Southern Coastal Carolina. Whenever I said this one out loud on the podcast, it felt like the most weird pick I've ever made in my life. But somebody, I don't even want to say alma mater because I don't know if I can say alma mater if I only went there for for a semester. But Georgia Southern, person, Georgia Southern,
former student
at the University of Georgia Southern. You go into a Georgia Southern Coastal Carolina matchup, we know what's at stake at that point. Like that's two teams that are going to go at each other's throats. It was a lot more higher scoring than I thought, and the total score was 64, and I went under 64.5. So Vegas couldn't have picked a better number, and I just got lucky and picked the right side of it. So that was beautiful. I already broke down all my NFL stuff. So 7-1, 4-0 in college, and 3-1 in NFL. I can't ask for a better first time doing this. This feels good.
Hey, and you really carried the pill for us this week. But hey, I'll tell you what, man, we're not sharps by any means. But if you're keeping track as a show, 11-5 through the first week of announcing our bets, like our official show bets live. 11-5, pretty good. Let's keep this momentum headed forward. I mean, it's a pretty significant win percentage.
Yeah, just drop full units on every bet we say. We're gonna guarantee money at some point, right? Like I honestly, I don't want to hype myself up as a super great bettor because me and Kenny do the same thing pretty much on Saturdays. We bet on every damn game, and then all of a sudden you look at it, we don't win no damn money because we might win a little bit of money here and there, but if we were actually like serious bettors and like went really, really hard on this stuff, we probably could. I think we could be positive, like significantly positive sports bettors. But sometimes you want to bet on the games you're watching, and we happen to watch a lot of college football on Saturday.
Game, man. Hey, look, you think about it like this: if we take 10 minutes to sit down and assess college football and NFL football and give some official picks, and we go 11-5, and maybe we need to spend 20 minutes on that this week.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe we gotta go. Let's go 16-0 next week. But we gotta get ready though, because that's tomorrow. So we have to get bets and stuff ready for tomorrow. That's always one of my favorite things we do on the podcast. I will say that I love talking about the betting. It's always Absolutely. a lot of fun. So like you said, we're gonna come back into this tomorrow, and we're not gonna focus too much on Georgia stuff and stuff like that because we go so far into the breakdowns on this. With this, so this tomorrow is going to be a little bit more of like a full-on breakdown. We have a little bit of hate week stuff coming up that we will get into tomorrow. I know Kenny's excited about it.
Yes, sir.
So tomorrow will be just more of an all-around podcast. We're going to break down things. Oh, excuse me. Right at the end of the podcast, I had a burp come up. That's my apologies. Tomorrow will be an episode we just kind of dive into everything. So you'll get a little bit more, full league-wide stuff going on, and it's going to be a really, really fun one, but I think that pretty much wraps us up for episode 17 of the Peach State Tailgate podcast. It was a great weekend in Georgia sports, like I said. And like the title says, it was a sweep in Georgia, especially even Georgia Tech. Sorry, Kenny, for the bet.
Yeah, sorry about it. No, man, it was a great weekend all around in Georgia sports. Braves and East champs couldn't ask for a better conclusion to the regular season there. So, no, super positive moving forward, and I'm excited to dive into tomorrow, get into some more bets, talk a little bit more ball from around the league, college and NFL, and just dive into some more stuff, man. But, it was a great episode. We talked about a lot. We covered a lot, negatives and positives all around the board. And, man, before we get out of here, I mentioned it at the beginning, but y'all interact with us, man. Check us out on the socials. Let us know what we can do to make the show better. We love bringing y'all sports content. We're going to keep doing it and moving forward. And, we're excited, man. We're going to keep doing this, and we appreciate y'all for listening.
Oh, yeah. Thank you guys so much.